I'm good. I am good at hitting the record button. What happens after that is a different story. Hello and welcome back to the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. This is episode 169. I am one of your hosts, Nolan, and I'm here with Charlie. How you doing, Charlie?
It's good to be with the MySpace of Kratom quitting.
Thank you. I hope that follows me around. And for those of you that don't have context, we did an interview with a very popular YouTuber, Meta Bechet, and I said I started using a long time ago and I quit before Kratom was even in the mainstream. So I was just like MySpace. Nobody knows what it is, where it came from.
So before we get into discussing that, we have the interview today. Lily is interviewing a family member who has a loved one who's addicted to Kratom. And she also has experience working in the Kratom industry in New York. And so she has a unique perspective.
Yeah, that sounds like a really interesting interview. Charlie and I wanted to talk a little bit about the value of lightheartedness as well as humor in quitting. We had an interview the other day with Meta Bechet, which I think is one of our more polarizing interviews as far as the style of it and the topics covered are concerned, not only for the tone of the interview, but just for the content itself. But it led us to talking about the value of humor in recovery. Charlie, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
I think it's important that we don't take ourselves too seriously. And I appreciate what you were trying to do in that interview was experimenting a little bit and a different perspective. And there was a couple of good chuckles in there. I know some of our listeners didn't find it amusing, either by their comments. Maybe the most succinct one was, yeah, no. But we also had folks that said, hey, this is refreshing. I appreciate this different perspective. It's probably not something we'll do over and over again and have such a pro-Kratom voice. To be honest with you, one of the reasons it was on, I knew you had this interview and I went to go post the interview on Saturday at 7:00. And I was like, oh, wow, this is going to be a lightning rod. And we also don't have another option to post. It was meant to be lighthearted and not to be upsetting, but I do want to apologize. Talk to one listener who felt that was a little triggering for them. But
absolutely,
right. Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. It's a tricky balance because I think for at least where that interview is concerned, it's a conversation that is pretty removed from the Kratom quitting space that we're all in, which is we're really trying very hard to either get off of it or stay off of it for very good reasons. Apologies to all the listeners out there who it was either difficult for them to hear that or it was a bit too much of a departure. But I will say I did enjoy talking to Meta because it was a conversation that I wasn't so used to having. And I think at least where my personality is concerned, I know that when I'm coming off of, or when I was getting off of my 30 gram per day addiction, I did need a couple people to laugh about it with. And I think that actually really helped, being able to try and lighten the mood wherever possible, even as difficult as that may seem. Anyway, but that's my perspective on it.
And we had the opportunity recently, just this week, as a follow-up to an interview we had with the Kansas City Star journalist who did this expose on 70H. The Kratom vendor wanted to come on our feed and tell their side of the story. And I think that might have been less fun and less humor. And we talked about it as a team, and we voted against giving them that platform. I think when we're quitting and when you're doing anything, you do risk, I don't want to use the word myopic, but you get a tunnel vision, and we get in our tribes, and many of us don't go to these pro-Kratom spaces on the internet anymore just because it can be upsetting hearing the messages. Kratom's not addictive, all that stuff.
I think that's a good point you make, Charlie. I think the space that we occupy, right, as the Kratom Sobriety Podcast is unique in that our role here is to help people get off of Kratom. And I think, unfortunately, one of the only ways you can do that from an internal perspective is to deny Kratom. And you don't have to do that outwardly. You don't have to go on these pro-Kratom subreddits and tell everyone that Kratom is bad and that no one else should use it. But you do have to develop this internal perspective where you're thinking like, oh man, I had a problem with that. This was addictive and I really need to calm down. No more Kratom for me. So we occupy an interesting position on the podcast where to bring up any pro Kratom or open use kind of opinions or policies is problematic only insofar as that it just makes it tougher, right? For people to develop their own internal compass against Kratom insofar as it helps them quit it, right?
This last week I thought about it, that at some level to quit any substance, you do have to like come to a point where you reject it, where at least for yourself. It's similar, I guess we've used this analogy before, I think, that it's like breaking up in a relationship and you used to love that person. Maybe they'll be dating somebody else. They're just not right for you. I do try myself. I try to avoid black and white thinking and thinking Kratom's all good or it's all bad. And it's up to you. If you want to hate Kratom, that's fine. It might be a good coping mechanism. But there are people that use it. And at the same time, I want to be empathetic. There are people that are able to use it without problem. And so I don't want to externalize my dysfunction with a substance and try to impose, like, I need to maybe have some self-regulation rather than expecting the external world to help me regulate that.
Oh, yeah. And because I know that in that interview, Meta asked me if I'd ever consider trying Kratom again. And my perspective was, I know that I have a serious problem with it and that I would never be able to do it again non-problematically. And you have to be able to, if you're listening to this podcast, you have to be able to recognize whether or not you have a problem with it. And you'll be able to answer that question in an instant. It'll be an instinct. And there are people, like Charlie said, that do not have a problem with it and can use it responsibly. But I know that I'm not one of those people.
Exactly. To me, if you're listening to this podcast and you've come to the point where it's out of control, abstinence is probably the only way. The Kratom industry itself would argue that you just need to learn how to use it. You could spend years of abuse and causing self-harm by trying to pursue that.
I know, right?
That you can use it.
Yes. That's what's tough, is because if I'd been told towards the end of my addiction, I just have to use it right, I wouldn't have been able to taper down to a point where I was only using it a little bit. I would have had to have come all the way off, which is what I did. But I think for a lot of people, for all of you that are quitting right now, take this as this is probably a good time for you to come off of it completely to see what your life is like without it. And I know that for me in my life, I am not going to have it in my life anymore because it's a statement. I quit once. I don't want to go through that again. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to touch it. And I don't want to think about it. It's okay if other people do. And it's fine if you do too.
And on that note, thanks for listening this week. And now for the interview.
Thanks, Charlie.
Welcome to the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. My name is Lily, and I'm here with Katja. Today, we're going to talk about her experience in the world with Kratom. She used to work at some kava Kratom bars and was not addicted herself. So we're really interesting to hear her point of view today. So hi, Katja.
I'm doing great. I'm really happy talking with you. I'm pleasantly surprised with how well you pronounce my name.
Please introduce yourself, where you're from or where you're living now and what you do.
My name is Katja, and I'm from Pennsylvania. I live in Los Angeles now. I moved here a year and a half ago after 3.5 years in Brooklyn, New York, where I first encountered this whole world was in Brooklyn, Manhattan, and the Kratom scene out there.
Okay. Yeah. And before we dive into the main subject, what kind of things bring you joy in your life? What do you do to relax in your free time?
That's a great question. I'm going to school and I work, so my schedule is pretty full of obligatory stuff, but I find a lot of joy in both of those things. I work with kids. I am a behavioral technician. I provide applied behavioral analysis therapy for kids with autism. And
Wow.
I'm going to school to get my teaching certification. So
That's
both of those
amazing.
things bring me joy. I also have a dog
Yeah.
named Clyde. Brings me a lot of joy.
What kind of dog is Clyde?
That is anyone's guess. He's got fur, some of it shed, some needs to be clipped. Who knows?
When did you first become aware of Kratom? And what did you initially know about it or think about it?
So my first awareness was back in 2019, and it was a one-off. I had a boyfriend was on and off again since I was 16, and he became addicted to heroin and was introduced to in a rehab facility in Florida. It was mentioned once in a text about these are the things he's doing, the supports he has to maintain sobriety. He unfortunately did not by any fault of the kratom. But then I didn't hear about it again until I was in Brooklyn. I'd been there for under a year looking for a coffee shop cafe setting that was open, and the time of day was currently like 9 p.m. where I could sit and do my work. I was working remotely at the time in
Yeah.
2021. So I found a kava kratom bar that was, they're all open late. Bars don't close in New York City until 4 a.m. This place was open until 2.
Wow.
Awesome. And I got there. I got zero work done because all I did was talk to people. It was one of the best social experiences of my life. We were just coming out of deep quarantine.
Mm,
And I was ecstatic to have found it. These people are so cool.
yeah.
They're so chatty. And you just got to sit at a bar and someone's going to talk to you. Give it 2 to 6 minutes and someone will be knee deep in a conversation with you.
Wow. So that was your first awareness, and you were just looking for a place to do some work and stumbled upon it. And you didn't really know what it was. It was just something that was mentioned.
No, because I hadn't seen it myself. At that time, 2019 to 2021, to the best of my recollection, it wasn't behind gas station clerks yet. It wasn't mixed in with any of the paraphernalia.
Yeah.
It existed even when I first discovered it for myself in this very limited, strange space of physical establishments serving it as a beverage.
When you emailed us, you mentioned you had worked in kava bars. What interested you?
I'd gotten into the social scene of this small consortium. Consider the number of bars in New York City, even if it's just Brooklyn and Manhattan. Between those boroughs, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of establishments, but only 6 that serve kava and kratom. So it's
Okay.
a very small knit community. Become very close with the people there. You can use your laptop at any time of the day, which makes it enticing for night owls. I was told the kava kratom bar was shut down by the health department, so we scooted over to another one. And that happens quite regularly, not for vermin reasons, but to drain money, fighting legal battles and keeping them closed. At the time, I'm thinking, this is atrocious. But we hopped over to another establishment and they were looking for help. I got a job there. Shortly after, I was personally served court summons for the establishment's neglect to pay rent. They owed something in the ballpark of $28,000. So I was like, oh, this ship is sinking. We got to go. Luckily, for my employment's sake, one of my most loyal regulars,
Okay. Yeah.
one of my regulars was there when I was served those papers. He said it's crazy because he had just signed the lease on a building in the Lower East Side of Manhattan where he was planning to open his own place. So I was poached from one establishment to the other.
Okay.
I jumped ship for unrelated reasons. That's my experience employment wise,
Okay.
totaling about a year.
This was 3 different kava kratom bars in 1 year.
I worked at 2, but frequented 4 of them, including the 2 I worked at.
Ok-
The 2 that I did not frequent were known as tweaker spots. They
Okay.
served extracts,
Okay.
which none of the establishments I ever worked at served. The first one, just frankly, probably because of disorganization. But the second establishment didn't serve extracts very strictly out of principle. So, yeah, the spaces are crazy. One of them is in a literal house. It's
Oh,
very easy to feel home there very quickly and to be welcomed in a city that's very bustling around you.
okay. Okay, so this
And
was all like
uh, yeah,
2021, 22, you said?
correct. Yes, began in 2021. I think I began my employment 2022 and eventually was out of the scene for employment's sake
Yeah.
by 2023.
Got it. Okay. So what was your initial observations like about the people in Kava Kratom bars? What were you noticing as someone with bartending experience in alcoholic places? What was the difference? You said people were chatty, but what else?
One of the things that became a running joke between my best friend and I, whom I met be working at one of these places. She lived a block away and was a remote worker. She joined me for my shifts. I love her to death and she's great. She's not an addict. She fell out of the social space of the places and hasn't been using it independently. But the regularity or loyalty of the patronage is unmatched. Unmatched. At the time, I attributed it to the way those spaces straddled the coffee shop cafe arena and the nighttime social bar arena, being open from 11 a.m. to 2, 3, 4 a.m. I attributed the regularity of patrons to that because the majority of our patrons were sober. A good portion of them recovering addicts from other substances, and a decent portion from the general Florida region. The friend who opened his own place in Manhattan was a recovering alcoholic, sober for 7 years, I believe.
Okay.
And he really towed the line initially, both to other patrons vis-a-vis me about the propensity for kratom and kava to help recovering addicts maintain their sobriety.
Yep.
I bought into it hook, line, and sinker. I felt like this was such an incredible social space. Third spaces are really big in New York City. Everyone lives in a shoebox. Have people over, you can't even fit yourself in your home. So
Yeah.
you gather other places, and these were exceptionally effective third spaces.
Yeah.
That combined with the fact they didn't offer alcohol was really special to me. I was really the entire time I was working in those spaces about how unfortunate it was they were being targeted and how much I thought they deserved to be a larger proportion of the social scene.
Yeah, it seemed groundbreaking to have a place that doesn't serve alcohol, stays open late, and you can meet with friends. What could be bad about that? None of us knew unfortunate things about this yet. At the time, all of us were going, this is great. I could do my work, talk with people post pandemic.
Mhm.
You want to connect. Anyone would be going through that just like you did. And especially if you have a job there, you're going to be there. Are you saying the community was unmatched, seeing these people every day, or multiple times a week?
It was a community where once you got in, which takes no time at all if you're like personable, little social butterfly. And even if you're not, once you're in, on your way home from work, it wasn't the only job I had while I was working. I'd be on my way home from another job. I'm craving a social connection. I don't have to text somebody to be like, hey, you want to meet me here? Just go. People will be there. I
Right.
can go and I can very dependably count on people I know, the people who I would otherwise text to meet up. They'll be there.
Yeah.
They'll be there in the next hour.
Okay.
It was a beautiful thing for that purpose. The regularity with which patrons frequented the establishments is more than indicative of a physical dependency on the substance. People not just spending a lot of time there, spending a lot.
How much money?
Yeah, it depends on the quality of the establishments, but top tier, I'm thinking of one particular establishment I frequented most often. Drinks that perfectly on par with New York City cocktail prices. We're talking like $16 to $23 a drink.
Okay.
And yeah, dropping 50 to 150. Sometimes I had patrons who would spend a solid $200 a day 4 to 6 days a week.
They were there every day and
Um,
they would stay there for hours and just keep sipping away at one of the drinks.
I had a few patrons who would come in and grab stuff to go. They'd be in multiple times a day.
How long did it take you to start raising an eyebrow at this and wondering what's going on? And are my boss's claims about being sober from alcohol, is this helping people or is this a different addiction? When did you have alarm bells going off for yourself?
The first alarm bells were faint, but they were in response to one particular patron. I'm a bartender. I've cut plenty of people off. I've only ever cut off one person in the kava bars, and it was someone who would drink himself to the point of vomiting.
Wow.
My experience with the substance, 3 occasions, threw up on every single one of them. For me, with my genetic makeup, whatever it is in my body that doesn't predispose me to addiction, having something 3 times and throwing up every time, I'm not going to drink that again.
Full rejection.
Not fun.
Yeah.
Being someone with that experience and then watching someone who, oh, they throw up every time. They don't stop. There's a problem there. The alarm bells were faint because it was one patron out of dozens. And then it wasn't until after I had already left the second establishment and my partner, whom I met at the first bar I was working at, he was driving his friend across the country to Los Angeles in the summer of 2023. Along the way, he encountered, so I know you said in your email that you don't typically say brand names. Should I avoid it? Blue bottles.
Yeah, the little blue bottles.
Tiny
Okay.
blue bottles he encountered on his way out here prior to us moving out here. When he came back, went downhill. He had already been sober from alcohol since that summer. That summer, he got sober from alcohol and picked up the blue bottles.
We got sober from alcohol. We went on a cross country road trip. I wonder if you found them in a gas station. Yeah, what do you know?
Somewhere in the Texas area, if I'm not mistaken.
Texas had a lot of them right away. They were one of the first places to be saturated. That's what I heard. He comes back with the blue bottles. What were you thinking? Well, cool, they have it packaged now. Were you worried your job might end? What were you thinking?
Yeah, I had left my job at that point. Like, Red Alert, my employer, was very adamant about not serving extracts. He had said the extracts are not the same thing. He didn't articulate it in the way I've come to understand it now, in terms of being able to isolate certain alkaloids, one of which we've known since 2001 has a tenfold greater potency than morphine, the 708. I saw the research paper and like, oh, this is so old. We've known this for so long.
They just had to apply it.
I was already on high alert about the extract at the time. I was totally okay with his substituting kratom for the alcohol that he was still at that time in very early sobriety.
All of us are ignorant about this until we start to put it together and understand it. I hope you don't beat yourself up. Everyone goes through the same thing of how did I not know? We didn't know. Can you talk about observing the progression, like with his use?
That was the summer of 2023.
Okay.
New York City leases are crazy. We squatted in our apartment for a month and then decided it was time to leave the city. We talked about moving to LA a whole bunch and decided that we would do a 6-month interim. I think we said 2 or 3 interim between Brooklyn and Los Angeles, and we would spend it with his parents in North Carolina. And so we do that. The goal of this interim period is to make and save money, living rent free, make as much as possible, spend as little as possible. Coming from Brooklyn, we both had to purchase cars, fund the across the country, apartment deposit, startup costs, furnishing. This was a time to grind and hustle. I was working 2 jobs, spending nothing, making great money. He was working 2 jobs, making good money, spending all of it. We kept kicking the can down the road about not ready yet, don't have the money. We're living with his parents, so he's able to use their vehicles. I had purchased a car before I even met him down there. And we're 5 months into what was supposed to be 2, maybe 3 months. I become aware that he has no money.
Okay.
Very little saved up. He winds up being gifted a car by his parents. And We drive out here. That was a crazy time. We were supposed to leave North Carolina together, but he needed to stop for drugs. He insisted he wasn't messing with the little blue bottles anymore.
Yeah.
Couldn't leave together. It was ultimately because if we left together, then I would have known what he was stopping for. We tagged, he drove ahead, caught up with each other. It was chaotic and stressful. Honestly, halfway into an anxiety attack because I knew it wasn't being honest. What do you do
Yeah,
when
it
you're
sounds
betting the future
stressful.
on someone who won't tell you the truth? Things got really bad. He wound up spending all of his money within 2-3 months of being out here, at which point he started tapping into my money. I was bad about checking my bank statements until January of this year, 2025, when he and I are sitting in a car dealership in Long Beach because I was purchasing a new vehicle after mine was totaled. I go to put the deposit down. I'm going to a dealership, you're going to test drive. You don't necessarily think you're going to put a deposit down that day. So I go to check my bank account, make sure I have what I need to put down. And I go in there. And it's not that I didn't have the money, I did have that money. I'm seeing 3 charges that were smoke shops that I did not go to. And I'm scrolling down further, and like even in the tiny little blurb that you get on your app, you can see the location. And I'm seeing Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm seeing New York City at times where he was there and I wasn't. I excused myself. I did not know what to do.
Oh my God. You're in the
I
dealership
put the
seeing
deposit down on
this?
the car. Left. He was in rehab a week later.
Okay, we need to break this down. You're in the dealership paying for this deposit. Is he with you?
Yeah. Sitting across from a sales rep.
You see that and you don't say anything. You just freeze and pretend like everything's normal.
I excused myself to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I actually thought I was going to choke.
Yeah, it's stressful.
I sat in the bathroom stall and I was like, let me see how much this was. Because I thought it was going to be an amount that I could mentally tally within the time span of a reasonable bathroom break.
You owe me
which is
$100,
not,
dude.
you owe me $100.
Yeah.
I got down to, I don't even know how many pages my mental tally is maxing out at 500-600. And also I've been in there 7-8 minutes. I was like, I need to go out. I can't even look at this. We get home. I could not speak to him in that car ride. We get home and I print out my statement and I highlight. And I
Good.
realized that it had been going on since October. I realized that it had totaled slightly over $2,400
Oh,
and that the most use, this is not the most he spent. This is just the most of my money that he
Yeah.
spent a single day had maxed out at 150.
and that was all in the
$150 in
blue.
a single day.
That was all in the blue bottles, you think? Or
Blue bottles, the
different
very
forms?
specifically 708 tab.
Yeah. You have evidence that he's doing this and he's still not talking to you about it. And you're just going through this whole betrayal process without his acknowledgement.
Once we got home, I needed receipts. So I got the receipts and we're talking.
Yeah.
I asked to see his phone. In the messages, there was an unsaved number. He had sent Apple Cash to once, $20. And then in the month or so thereafter, had just sent screenshots of the Apple Cash thing. Like that would pop up on someone's phone. And if you weren't paying attention, it would look like, yeah, there was the Apple Cash. Then I see it in the messages. But it's just a screenshot. No one sent you any money. And I come to learn that this is the bodega less than a block away from us.
Okay.
That's the moment where this solidified. I hadn't been in the AA rooms. I hadn't been in Al-Anon rooms yet. And so I didn't even have the vocabulary or theory behind this an illness of delusion. But that moment crystallized the fact that you're so far from reality. You're going to risk this again. The moment they find out that you have, over the course of the last month, defrauded them of upwards of $500-600, what makes you think they're not going to pull a gun on you? What makes you think they're going to be okay with you walking out of there again, having stolen hundreds of dollars?
Oh, you're saying he was fake paying? I didn't understand. So he's sending fake payments to the person at the bodega on the block? That's weird.
Which
How
you
would
could
they not know
literally
that?
see from our.
So maybe they're all delusional
the idea you would walk back in there again. I asked him, I was like, what were you thinking? Were you thinking I wouldn't notice
Yeah.
eventually? His response was, he knew I would find out eventually. This delusion, it makes no sense. He'd gotten really sick at that point, and speaking with him about it was doing more harm than good. We spent 2 or 3 days talking before I was like, you need to go. You're either going to move out or go to rehab.
Okay, so you told him he should go to rehab. You were aware he needed help beyond the average person. Did you guys have regular conversations about his sobriety before this happened? Or was it so fast from dropping alcohol that you didn't even talk about it before it started happening?
We did talk about sobriety quite a lot, not nearly as much as we talk about it now, but we did. Alcohol was something we tried to get sober from 6 months before he eventually did. New Year's Eve of what? New Year's Eve of 2023 was a pretty rough turning point for us and his drinking, because for him, drinking was never not followed by harder drugs. New Year's Eve became rough. We'd gone out, had a good time, did a little shrooms and Molly chocolate, went to this really cool New Year's Eve thing. I won a limbo game. I had a great time. And then ball drops. We have our little time afterwards. And then I want to go home. We've been partying for hours and it's raining a little bit and I'm good. I've had a great night. And he just wants to keep going. And that was the story of our substance infused social life.
Okay.
Never knowing when to call it quits. But with no is
Yeah.
having absolutely no off button. He can bankrupt himself, and he'll bankrupt himself before he bankrupts you, but he will bankrupt you.
Yeah.
He won't do that again. I believe him. He had 6.5 months of sobriety and hasn't touched me. I fear that I've given an impression of somebody who was using me without loving me. And to be clear, he was using me, but also loving me.
We're getting through the points of the story. And this is the trauma and chaos part, but only it's the addiction speaking, not the person. One of my questions was, did you struggle to separate the person from the addiction? How did you cope and care for yourself during that time?
I would say that immediately after discovering that, I had no difficulty separating the man from the disease. I know that's not the person. It was easy because I did not want it to be the person. That would be worst case scenario.
Yeah.
I struggled with separating the man from the addiction when I leave for work for 6, 7, 8 hours and come home and nothing's done. I struggled with that. And then even though after his first treatment and as evidenced by the relapse, that sobriety wasn't, there were a lot of half measures. As he struggled early sobriety, it was difficult for me to still leave for work and I still come home and
Yeah.
nothing's done still. It's very difficult for me to separate it in those moments. Believe you are not your addiction and neither of us have control over your addiction. Your best hope is to give it up to God, your higher power. I believe that, and I've only come to believe that more wholeheartedly. I'm also working full time. I went back to school to get my degree. I need a partner.
You're a busy lady.
You want to get a dog? Awesome. I need a partner. We can talk about a dog once the dishes get done.
Fair.
This is the struggle I have, being able to separate the man from the addiction, but being able to separate the man with the addiction from this partner of my ideal fantasy. It's harder when my partner has to leave for 3, 4 weeks. We just got a dog. All this is my responsibility.
Yeah.
That's harder, but not impossible. On my best days, I remind myself there's value in managing my situation, which had become unmanageable. And on my worst days, I struggle with worrying that my partner won't be able to find the same vigor or passion in pushing his rock up the hill.
Yeah. It's scary. Ultimately, it's their battle when you can be as supportive as possible. You mentioned Al-Anon. For those who don't know, Al-Anon is for folks to attend if they know someone or either they grew up with or are married to or dating or live with someone that suffers or suffered from addiction. It's a support. Oh, yeah, I've been through that. Oh, I grew up with an alcoholic mom. Oh, I grew up with an alcoholic dad, or my boyfriend was an alcoholic. It's for people to share their experiences and just come together on this difficult subject without having to be addicted themselves. So, could you talk about how
Yeah,
you found Al Anon and how that started?
for sure. Yeah, you're right. There's a ton of different factions or connections to
Mm.
Al Anon's for anyone affected by another person's addiction. Known a person who's there because their employer is an addict. The general premise, which I found difficult to embrace, is finding serenity for yourself, regardless of the behavior or actions of the addict. And it is geared towards people who love and care for addicts who are in sobriety, for addicts who are in active addiction, for addicts who are quote unquote dry,
Yep.
even in sobriety. And so the program is meant to use the very same 12 steps as AA to help you find serenity for yourself. And I found the program whilst my partner was in rehab for the first time. I did not go to many meetings. When he got out and began attending A meetings very regularly, he did first 90 and 90, 90 meetings, 90 days, and
Yeah.
then we continued on from there. In the beginning, I made a more concerted effort. I went to a women's group weekly every Sunday, but I found more value in attending AA meetings with him at first and then even without him. There's a certain fellowship in AA meetings, at least in the Los Angeles area, that doesn't exist in all Al Anon meetings.
If you wanna talk more about why you found the AA and Al-Anon meetings helpful, and did they know what kratom was in those meetings, or was that mysterious?
To answer your latter question, no, not often. Seldom do they know what kratom is.
Yeah.
My partner has met a few people who, in AA meetings who know what the substance is, a few who are there for that as their choice. But on the whole, I do find myself doing the opposite evangelizing to what I did while I was working in the spaces, which is warning. Do
Yeah.
not, under any circumstances, describe what the products look like, where you find them. So I think I find myself trying to express what the advertisement looks like,
Yeah.
because that is what I think is the most insidious. I remember the first time I saw an advertisement for those little blue bottles. It said nothing other than it's in a gas station, like convenience store, and it is a standalone poster before you reach the register. And this poster says clean energy,
Ugh.
fully insinuating it is a substitute for coffee, for
Yep.
caffeine. I have a collection where my spare tire is supposed to be in my car. I have a collection now I kept one of every product that
Oh,
I found whilst cleaning out our apartment and his
got it.
vehicle. The first time he was in rehab, I devoted an inordinate amount of time to documenting in an Excel spreadsheet which products include which disclosures in which forms. Is it printed on the
Yeah.
bottle? Is it in an insert? Is it vis-a-vis a QR code? Overall,
Did any of them say
I remember the first one I put a star. It says in extraordinarily small font, which on this bottle was warped on the shrink wrap. You can make it out if you're trying.
yeah.
It did not say warning may cause addiction. It said, as with any psychoactive substance, even caffeine, regular use may induce a physical dependency.
Regular use, just like coffee or sugar, may lead to dependency. No,
Right.
not just like coffee or sugar. Maybe there is someone, but no one is running to secretly buy coffee at 2 a.m. and going into debt buying coffee. Nope.
You have this twofold, like a T chart of evidence for the harmful nature of this substance. On one side, you have the produced behaviors. People are going broke using the substance at extreme financial and social costs,
Yeah.
which is how virtually any other addiction is classified. Are you doing it despite extreme harm?
Yep.
Are you unable to stop despite a desire to?
Yep.
In my Brit check mark on all of the above, pharmacologically and
Yep.
physiologically, no other substance, not a controlled substance, is touching your mu opioid receptor, let alone producing a full blown interaction. And we have this idea in the common culture of opioids as substances derived directly from opium or synthesizing substances from opium. And it's wicked because I have a layman's understanding of neurochemicals enough to inform me you can interact with neurological receptors in different ways. And the idea that opioids only encompass one type of interaction. I remember, if you want to know the line I was told in the
Yeah.
kava bars was Kratom doesn't park the car in your opioid receptors, but it does a drive by, which is an extraordinarily inaccurate and very harmful sentiment. But I espoused it for
Yeah.
years.
It makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Oh, I remember thinking I was given the line and I was like, oh, that's pretty slick. I'll say that.
Did
With the
people
right kind
ask
of
you,
customer.
did people ask you that question a lot?
People asked me, does it get you buzzed? We get a lot of people familiar with it bringing their friends in, right? Our
Yeah.
friends
Yeah.
hadn't tried it, aren't sober. I think I'm doing some good balancing, always informing that you don't ever drink this and alcohol in the same day. You're going to kill your liver, almost definitely going to throw up, and you're not going to have a good time. It's a terrible idea. And be very adamant about that. When they ask, does this get you buzzed? They're weighing the decision. Do I try this and forego the beer garden later? My understanding is that, yeah, this does get you buzzed, which it does.
In a different way. Yeah.
Whole leaf kratom is a different story. I'm not saying it's safe. I'm not saying it's not addictive, but it is a different story.
Yeah, the extracts just compounded everything and made it faster and stronger, like superbug version. I love that you made a spreadsheet, the claims or lack of claims that these products were making, because I think a lot of us go through that outrage. Like, this says nothing about anything on it. Where's the bold font that says even the word kratom? Where are the warnings, age restrictions? I feel like now they're making progress on the age restriction, say 21 and over.
But I'm looking at the product that in AA speak brings me into quote unquote the barber shop, right? AA has this slogan of if you walk into the barber shop enough times, you're going to get a haircut. And for alcoholics, meaning like you spend enough time in a bar, you're going to get a drink. For the kratom addict in my life, if you step foot inside a smoke shop enough times for other things, you need a vape. You're going to get Zen. You can get those online. For him, it is a ritual. He enjoys
Yeah.
going out to get it. There's a danger to it though. If you walk inside the barbershop enough times, you're going to get the haircut. I'm looking at product that brings me into the barbershop, my jewel pods. In California, you can't get the menthol pods, so it's an if basis. You go to the smoke shops for them. I'm looking at this product right now, and there is a massive warning. This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. There's nothing of the sort for any of these products. I live in this state where there's dispensaries with
Everywhere.
probably a frequency of like 70% compared to smoke shops. Dispensaries have bouncers who check your ID in an atrium before you're even allowed to walk through the very heavy velvet curtains that separate you from the actual
Yeah.
showroom. You're not getting in there if you're underaged. They are quite forthcoming about, oh, that's going to knock you on your ass. When you're asking about a product, be like, oh, that's something that is heavy. That's something that there are people who are knowledgeable about the products. The smoke shop I sometimes get my jewel pods at is owned by two nice brothers who don't know shit about the extraordinarily expansive array of products that are selling. They don't use them. They just know a growing handful of lawyers and students who come in with extraordinary regularity. And they'll tell me it seems to really help them work. My question for them, this first conversation we had about it was, how much do they spend a day? These individuals you're thinking about. He paused a lot. From his
Yeah.
perspective as a business owner, this is a good thing. From my perspective as somebody who loves an addict, this is terrifying. It has been an interesting ride.
It took a long time for nicotine to be labeled as addictive and dangerous. And a long time ago, cigarettes were thought to be healthy, and they were told by doctors that we should take them for our health as an everyday thing. And it was normalized. And it took a really long time for that to be uncovered as a total lie and to expose the studies. I feel like this is the next wave of that phenomenon, people getting addicted without understanding it phase. And except that this is having immediate health, financial, mental health effects, whereas smoking has long-term horrible health effects. This has within a year effects on people, sending people to rehab, going broke, and physical and mental problems. It's hard to go through. Of course, it's interesting to hear the perspective of someone firsthand experiencing it and watching it happen in your apartment. Do you think there's anything that could be done right now for labeling? What do you feel about that?
Yeah. So I listened to your recent episode interviewing, and his name is escaping me right now. He's a YouTuber.
Meta?
Yes, thank you. He proposed some potential actions, remedies. I found myself agreeing with him from a diplomatic and policy perspective. Labeling, I agree, age restriction. As
Mhm.
somebody who lives in the world, I also understand that age restrictions don't stop teenagers. Labeling sometimes entices them. Understanding that and coming from a place where I have personally experienced and witnessed the heartbreak that addiction to this substance causes, to me, the cost seems too high to
Oh,
risk
yeah.
that. I don't believe anything beyond whole leaf crack. To my understanding of the 52 alkaloids, the major one, mitragynine, has some interesting anti addictive properties. I don't think that anybody stateside does because we don't put the money into research. But anything beyond whole leaf, the health benefits where? And the risks being just only more observable by the day. I don't think those should be legal at all. I do agree there is potentially tremendous benefit to researching the substance as an alternative for traditional opioids in a clinical prescription setting. Absolutely. It is heartbreaking in a different way that we won't explore that. But in terms of can you buy it in a gas station? Is it at 7-Eleven across the street? Wild. It is wild. It's unconscionable. Legislators on both sides confronted the limitations of the FDA for excluding natural supplements. They confronted that back when, 2012, when the legalization of marijuana, like those fights on a state by state basis were really kicking off. And the limitations of the FDA's scope there were confronted by plenty of lawmakers. And we didn't change it. I don't believe we should have, but I don't believe that limitation in their scope. It is strange to me that peyote's not legal.
Yeah. Ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca, that's not legal. These are all natural supplements that are simply recognized as having some pretty crazy effects that
Yeah.
aren't legal. And the idea that you have to be either opium or a very strong psychedelic to be regulated is baffling to me.
There should be more regulation, but people don't know much about Kratom. I don't think a lot of people are going to know what it is until it becomes a huge problem and people are getting sick and dying, which is really sad. I think it has to make major headlines repeatedly for it to start to sink in, which is unfortunate.
My partner has said if it weren't for his parents enabling financial support, it is more than likely that once the money had run out, there would have been a dangerous flirtation with cheaper substances.
He could have gone down that path and run out of money quick.
The idea
Made
that people
poor
can't
choices.
overdose and die on this substance is just,
It's possible.
it's
It's
possible.
possible.
Limiting the scope to the substance is silly.
It's hard because it shouldn't be used unless in a clinical setting as a harm reduction for full opioids, and heroin is not as harmful as heroin. He could have gone down the opposite path, going from kratom to something more harmful because it puts you in that headspace. What is the current status of your partner now?
Today, he is 13 days sober, and he is 13 days into a residential treatment program.
Okay.
He's talking about discharging sometime this coming week. And our agreement is that him leaving that facility is not a good thing unless everything is set up outside. That means his intensive outpatient program is selected and different from before. He's got his personal therapist, psychiatrist, that we have booked a couples counselor, and that he has set up his medically assisted treatment. He was using Brixadi. The longevity of those injections has been problematic, so he's likely switching to something else. The idea being that he is sober now and is planning to leave treatment once all of that is set up. I have told him expressly that I do not give a shit how long it takes for all that to set up. What I care about is whether or not he is waiting to leave the facility until everything has been established. Last time when he left his treatment program, none of the above were established. And there was, I believe now, in retrospect, serious harm done after he got out of his last program where he was struggling to find those supports.
Do you feel like there's adequate after treatment support, or is it just every man for himself?
It depends, I think. The shortcomings of aftercare plans, in my opinion, seem to be born really starkly from the fact that this is a for profit capitalistic enterprise. There is incentive to not devote resources to ensuring a patient has the best chance at sobriety. There are significant financial incentives to keep them there. If you can't keep them there, then get them back. Ironically, your best chance at success is with a vertically integrated program that offers not just inpatient, but also the outpatient, the therapists, and MAT. If you can find a vertically integrated program that doesn't have an incentive to keep you in inpatient, because when you move to outpatient to your MAT on the outside, they're still profiting off of you. That's your best bet for care given with integrity and concern for your well being.
That sounds hard to watch and hope everything works out.
It is infuriating. And that's why I found a program to help me find serenity.
Good. Do you have any advice to someone going through what you've been going through? Just another Al-Anon person going through someone that is going through addiction and kratom?
Do. My key advice is to familiarize yourself with Al Anon principles. The first step is admitting that you are powerless over alcohol. Insert your substance of applicability, that you are powerless over it. My, and I suspect plenty of other Al Anon / codependents, my chief struggle is with understanding that powerlessness, the futile nature of any control I try to exert over the situation, and recognizing the harm that comes from trying to do that, not just to myself, but to my partner in the long run. Understanding you are powerless, understanding it's possible to detach with love, and understanding there's a girl in Los Angeles who's going through something similar, and she'd be happy to talk to you if you would like.
Yeah.
Those are my main suggestions.
Anything else you want to share before we close?
I would like to share just the one source of light outside of my partner and our connection that has been there for me this whole time that I've found in the AA rooms. When you get a chance to hear someone speak who's got 19 years of sobriety, 28 years of sobriety, one of the very first speakers I heard had 47 years of sobriety. And you
Nice.
get to look at that person in the flesh. That's a real human being in front of you. They do not have all the answers and they didn't do it all perfectly, but they did it. If you can find that evidence of hope, that evidence of
Mhm.
success, it can do a lot for morale as you're struggling with your own sobriety or with the sobriety of somebody that you love, and will help you delight a little bit more in pushing your boulder up the hill when you realize someone has been pushing it for 4+ decades. They're an eloquent speaker, funny, and living a fulfilling life.
Yep.
So,
I'll find someone still here and doing it, and it can give you hope for your person struggling. Thank you for sharing your insight. We were interested in talking to you because you worked firsthand in this environment and were exposed to it all the time. And now just struggling firsthand with it in your own home and being gracious and just being able to talk about it from an open heart instead of judgment. I hope that your story, and I know that it will, help other people going through a similar process. It's difficult for everyone involved, and it's good to hear different perspectives.
I
Thank you
hope
for your
so.
time.
No, thank you very much for having me, for hearing the pleas of my original email.
All right, we'll say goodbye. Thank you, Katja. Bye.